Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice for radio. So today, I'm going to be showing you an exciting new stadium card coming out in the upcoming expansion Crimson Invasion. It's coming in November, in case you'd forgotten. It is the somewhat aggressively named Ravaged Plains. And in a nutshell, it just means that each of your Darkness and Dragon Pokemon do 10 more damage. Although I suppose I should also mention that so do your opponents. Now, you might be thinking, hang on a second, Ross, that sounds just a teensy bit familiar. And it kind of does. Kind of 25% familiar. Essentially, it's half of Reverse Valley, but only for you, not for your opponent. And for Darkness and Dragon, not just for Darkness. Reverse Valley is one of these two-sided stadiums. One side faces you, one side faces your opponent, and one side of the table has their Darkness Pokemon doing an extra 10 damage, and the other side of the table has their Metal Pokemon taking 10 less damage. So, firstly, I suppose we need to talk if this is any good, and we should probably then have a look at whether it's worth playing, because, you know, Reverse Valley is a thing. Now, essentially, as with all of these, just like with Crobat G back in the day, just like with Choice Band, Professor Kukui, these aren't worth playing for the sake of it. You play these to hit the numbers. Doing extra damage is always good. I've said that on a number of occasions. But I suppose I should maybe qualify that slightly by saying that doing extra damage is always good if it allows you to hit the numbers. I'll give you a lovely example. Noivern GX does 50 damage for 2 energy. Now, 50 damage is a little bit rubbish, because you basically don't KO anything. But you put that up to 60 damage, i.e. by playing Ravaged Plains, and all of a sudden now you're getting a KO on 60 HP basics. That means things like Rowlet, Alolan Vulpix, but not things like Grubbin or Trubbish that have 70 HP. So if you're expecting a whole bunch of 70 HP basics, this isn't going to be particularly good. But if you're expecting a whole bunch of 60 HP basics, then this stadium basically means that Noivern goes from almost taking prizes to taking prizes, and that's wonderful. Similarly, Sonic Volume generally does 120 damage, but if you do an extra 10, you get a one-hit KO on Yveltal. You get a one-hit KO on Volcanion. You get a one-hit KO on Xerneas. So if you're expecting those Pokemon to be seeing play, then all of a sudden, in a Noivern deck, this stadium makes a great deal of sense. You're taking KOs that you would otherwise not be able to take. Of course, anytime you're playing a stadium, you do have to remind yourself that you only get to play one at a time. You can play multiple stadiums in one deck, but you can only play one stadium per turn. And if you play multiple stadiums, then it's less likely that you're going to have the right stadium at the right time. It's the same reason we generally don't play several different types of basic energy in a deck. You can play water energy in a Darkrai deck so that you can play the really good Alolan Ninetales, but then you're going to end up hitting water energy when you want to play a dark energy, and that's no good. You could play Ultra of the Moon in Noivern, because you generally will be playing Darkness or Psychic Energy. And Ultra of the Moon's really good. Having said that, Noivern actually has free retreat. Maybe not the best example, but let's say you're playing it in an Yveltal deck. Well, all of a sudden, your baby Yveltal, hey Nick, goes from having free retreat with Ultra of the Moon to a really awkward retreat while doing an extra 10 damage. And if we look at baby Yveltal, you're doing 30. There's not much difference between 30 and 40 here. Doesn't really help you hit any numbers. Similarly, 100 to 110 doesn't really help you hit any of the numbers. But if we go back to Noivern, we play this stadium with a choice band, we're now hitting 90, which means we're 2-hit KOing Pokemon like Darkrai and Drampa that we would be 3-hit KOing, even with a choice band, if we weren't playing the stadium. So, don't play the stadium to do the extra damage. Play this stadium because it's going to do the extra numbers. Similarly, if you look at something like a speed Darkrai deck, this absolutely is a worthwhile endeavour, because Dark Pulse essentially means you're always hitting an even number of damage. So if you're against something like a Lapras, for instance, that has an odd number of HP, then you need 9 energy plus the 20 base to do 200 damage and actually do 10 too much. But if you have this stadium in play, then you have 8 energy plus the 20 base. You do 180, the stadium puts it up to 190, and all of a sudden, you are actually using 1 fewer energy. Want another example? Here's a great one. Choice Band does 30 extra damage. Choice Band plus this stadium does 40 extra damage, and that's 2 fewer energy you need to have in play, assuming in this example that they've got an even number of HP. So let's say something like a Drampa. You would generally need 8 energy to do 160, plus the 20 base is 180. But with a Choice Band and a stadium, you only actually need to be doing 140, so now 6 energy is 120, plus the 20 base is 140, plus the Choice Band and stadium is 180. So now you're getting a one-hit KO with 6 energy rather than 8. Or with just a Choice Band, you'd be needing 7 energy, and you'd be hitting for 190. And in terms of just basic usage of this stadium, that's what it comes down to. Is it helping you hit the numbers? Because in Speed Darkrai, it means you're using fewer energy. In Noivern, it really helps you to hit some key numbers. But if you're really relying on the Baby Yveltal, you're not really hitting any key numbers with it. It doesn't really do that much for you. Though if you disagree, do remember the comment section's open. Be nice. So, there are a couple of other issues at play here. Firstly, it is a stadium. Field Blower is everywhere at the moment. Every deck is playing 2 or 3 Field Blowers, and of course your opponent can just replace the stadium. But I like this, and the example I always use is Altar of the Moon and Altar of the Sun. Altar of the Moon, you play it, you retreat. Even if your opponent gets rid of it the next turn, you've had some use from it. Altar of the Sun takes away your weakness, so if your opponent gets rid of it before they attack, you've played it but you've gotten nothing from it. This helps you on your turn, so even if it goes straight away, you've still gotten some use out of it, which is quite nice. The other issue, of course, and this is a huge issue, Dragon Pokemon are using double Dragon energy. Now, a lot of people are asking whether we are or are not going to be getting a Double Dragon reprint in the near future. The honest answer is, I don't know. I cannot answer that question for you. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But I can tell you that all of these Dragon Pokemon, like Noivern, like Giratina, are an awful lot more playable with Double Dragon energy than they are without Double Dragon energy. They saw a bit of play here or there, but did you remember all those great Noivern decks at Worlds? Because I don't. Because they really were not making splashes at Worlds. Even with Double Dragon energy, they weren't amazing. Losing Double Dragon energy is going to be a huge, huge problem for these Dragon decks. And if nobody's playing Dragon Pokemon, then doing an extra 10 damage with those Dragon Pokemon that nobody's using, kind of irrelevant. And then, of course, the elephant in the room that I mentioned earlier. We've got Reverse Valley. We already have a stadium that allows our Darkness Pokemon, and as a side note, it is Darkness, not Dark, to do an extra 10 damage. Is this better? And the answer is, it depends. If you're playing a Dark deck and your opponent is playing a deck that is neither Dark, nor Dragon, nor Metal, it makes literally no difference which one you play. You're doing an extra 10 damage, nothing is happening. If you're against a Metal deck, and as a side note it is Metal not Steel in the trading card game, you really want Ravaged Plains. Otherwise you're allowing your opponent to just completely negate your extra damage. If a Darkness deck plays against a Metal deck with Reverse Valley out, assuming it's that way round, it does nothing. Actually, to be fair, if it's the other way round, it does nothing as well. So it either does both or it does neither. Whereas if you're in the Darkness Mirror match, you really want Reverse Valley, because otherwise Ravaged Plains allows you and your opponent to do an extra 10 damage, so although you are gaining a slight advantage, so is your opponent. Darkness Mirror match, you want Reverse Valley. Playing against a metal deck, you want Ravaged Plains. And I suppose if you're playing a dark deck against a dragon, you also want Reverse Valley so your opponent's also not doing an extra 10. But a lot of the time, it's not going to make a huge difference, to be perfectly honest. And I am going to give this 3 Wassies. I like it. It's not a great stadium, but remember that Reverse Valley isn't going to last forever. I'm like 99% sure that next September our rotation is going to be Sun and Moon onwards, which means we're losing Reverse Valley, at which point Ravaged Plains becomes your only option. So, it is a good card. It is a card to have in your binder, hence the 3 Wassie calculation, but it's not a stunning stadium. Reverse Valley has seen a bit of play. This will see a little bit of play. But if you disagree with me, well, I guess that's why there's a comment section. Go nuts, be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. That's where the live action happens. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus pods, etc., then check it out at patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.